Good evening, everybody. On behalf of our Executive Director, Corrado Paina, and all the staff at the Italian Chamber of Commerce of Ontario, welcome back to our Tutti Tavola cooking class, sponsored by the Loft Cooking School at Longo's. Today, we will grill an amazing seared tuna with chickpea salad and gremolata, a quick and versatile dish that makes for a perfect summery lunch or light dinner when people just want to spend time outside and enjoy the great weather. For more recipes and grilling suggestions, check Longo's Summer Experience magazine, available for free at Longo's until they last. You can pick up a copy in your preferred store or check the online edition at www.longos.com. Remember, Longo's cooking classes will be back at the Loft in the fall with exciting programs for both adults and children. The new schedule will be available online from early August. Don't miss it. We're so proud of having Longo's and the Loft Cooking School as our partner for this cooking class series. At the Chamber, we create connections between the Canadian and Italian business communities. We facilitate trade relations and assist companies to expand their businesses into foreign markets. The food and beverage sector is one in which we're very much involved, where Italy and Canada connect for a perfect combination of imported, certified, and unique products from Italy and the best products locally grown in Canada to create outstanding recipes, bringing excellence at your table. Thanks to the Longo stores. Roberto is ready to start. This evening, we're going back into his kitchen, where he will show us his plan B to prepare this dish indoors so that we can be ready for rainy days like this one. Before starting, we will show you a video of Calabria. This beautiful region of southern Italy, our chef found inspiration in Calabria for many of his dishes featured during his over 20 years of experience as executive chef. The seared tuna recipe he will be preparing with us was created after his stay in beautiful Tropea. Later on, ask chef about wine pairing for seared tuna. He will be able to give you great suggestions. Also, tomorrow night at 6 p.m., follow us via Facebook Live. We will present authentic Italian pizza al padellino, Italian-style pan pizza, and a selection of certified cheeses and cured meats to go with it. We hope you will enjoy tonight's class. Send us your seared tuna photos and get ready for an incredible grilled angel cake next Tuesday, a specialty from Chef Roberto. Enjoy the video and then let's go tutti a tavola. Buon appetito!
Hi, everyone. Indoors to my kitchen. So as Tiziana mentioned, this is what we do in a range. This dish was supposed to be prepared outside on the grill, but you know, I can only pick my days. I can't pick the weather. So I'm going to do this indoors. And this dish actually works very, very well in a grill pan. So that's how we're going to be cooking it. First of all, I want to get the tuna marinated. I have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful piece of tuna from Longo's. I got the whole loin just because I wanted you guys to see, how beautiful this is. Sometimes when they're cut into steaks, it's a little bit difficult just to see how gorgeous it is. So I got the whole piece. I'm lucky that way. And I'm going to show you if you are going to serve for quite a few people, free to ask. I just went to the counter at Longo's and I asked them for a nice full piece and they were happy to get one for me. So if you're doing a lot of people, instead of grabbing 4 or 5 or 6 small slices, the ones that are already prepackaged, just ask them for a full big loin, and that way you don't have to mess around so much with all the little pieces. So the loin itself, very, very simple. We're just going to break it down into some pieces. So on our cutting board, I have a separate cutting board to do the tuna on because I will be doing veg prep on the table underneath. So I'm going to start off by portioning the tuna. So what I want to do here is I just want to cut the loin. You see here, instead of this whole big piece, I'm just going to cut this into some smaller pieces, the full length of the tuna. So we have one nice little loin like that. And then this one, I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to cut through that point. What we're looking for here is to try and get pieces that are about the same diameter. We want the girth of the piece very similar. Even if they're, this one's pretty triangular, this one has a little round piece on it. That doesn't really matter. You just want the size of the loins to be very, very similar. So now that we have these, I'm going to set them aside, and we're going to work quickly on the marinade. So the marinade for this dish, for the tuna, is very, very simple. Again, I want to do dishes that aren't, intimidating. Dish is not intimidating, should not be intimidating at all. A few very simple ingredients, a little bit of shallot. So again, these are chicken leg shallots. They're long and thin as opposed to the rounder ones, the regular that you'll see. Longo's always has beautiful chicken leg shallots, so I always buy the chicken legs. They're just a little bit sweeter, I find. A lemon and a little bit of capers. So to do the marinade, very simple. We take some capers, and not a lot, especially the capers. These ones are packed in brine, so they tend to be quite salty. So just a few of these capers, we're going to give them just a very quick chop. You don't want to break them up too small. See the little pieces of the capers on the tuna when you finish cooking it. So just give it a quick little chop, and into our bowl, we take our shallots, and the shallot, again, we're just going to cut it into pieces. We don't have to go too tiny on these. And so I just cut it in half lengthwise, and then nice and thin, slice it. Again, they don't have to be super, super, super crazy thin. It's okay if there's a few pieces left on the tuna. We want to be able to see them. It just makes it look pretty nice. So our little sliver of shallots, they just go in, kind of break them up as you're, and then a lemon. So we just want to use the zest of the lemon. So with a little microplane zester, we just go through and grate off a little bit of the lemon. That's about it. You don't want to go too crazy. We are going to be putting the Gremolata on, which is kind of heavy on the lemon anyway. So that's that. Now we're going to put in a little olive oil. So this is some of the Longo signature series olive oil. This is a Tuscan one, which I really like because it's nice and sweet. There's also a Sicilian one that tends to be a little bit more peppery, which is also good for application. But with the tuna, I went for the sweeter sort of sweeter sort of profile for the olive oil. So that's our marinade. Very simple, and not a ton of it. Again, we don't want to drown the tuna. We just want to have enough to sort of coat the tuna loins. So we go in, rub it around, get your hands dirty. One of the beautiful parts of cooking is acting like a 6-year-old and getting your hands all dirty. So we just flop it around. And the last thing that we do is we're going to put a couple turns of black pepper on here. Now, when it comes to the black pepper, be generous. The bite of the black pepper works really well with this dish. If you don't put any pepper on here, I don't know, it's just not as, it doesn't turn out as good. You want the bite. You want a little bit of spice, a little bit of heat on the dish. You can use whatever else you want on here. I mean, you could put, oh man, you could put garlic in here if you really wanted garlic. I like shallots because they're a little softer in flavor. But you can put herbs if you want. I'm keeping it very simple, but you could add any other herbs that you want. If you like other herbs, that's absolutely fine. You know, have some fun, play with it. That's our tuna. I'm just going to set this aside because we want to marinate it for about now. I don't think we'll have quite an hour, so, you know, I'll just kind of push it a little bit. But ideally, you want to let this marinate for about an hour in the fridge. So I'm just going to fire this in the fridge. If anyone has any questions, that would be a good time.
Anything? Hello, Chef. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
So is there any other fish that you can use instead of the tuna?
Yeah, I mean, you could use any
meaty fish like a striped bass, branzino, swordfish works well. The tuna is especially nice because it looks, you know, when it's carved, you have that bright red core, so it looks a little nicer, and a lot of people really enjoy tuna. So yeah, you can substitute. The reason I'm doing this dish this way is, as Tiziana mentioned, when I was in Tropea, I was fortunate enough to spend, what was it? I think it was like 5 weeks in Tropea years ago. And it was the first day that I got there. It was horrible train ride down there. 10 times as long to get there as it should have. And I finally got to Tropea in the middle of the afternoon, and it was hot, and I was exhausted, and I was starving. And I went into a restaurant, and I just, thing that I saw, and it was this dish. So I've made a couple little adjustments, a couple small minor tweaks to it, but ideally it's the exact same dish. But again, yeah, you could substitute other fish if you want. I'm just, you know, nostalgia. It reminds me of my. So anything else?
Yes. Is it best to cook the tuna at fridge temperature or at room temperature?
Usually fridge. If you buy tuna that's frozen, so if you buy tuna that's frozen, you want to make sure that you thaw it in the fridge. But again, you take it out just before you need to portion it, get it in the marinade, right back in the fridge, and then out of the fridge and start cooking right away. Tuna, I mean, it's raw fish. You want to be careful with it. You don't want to leave it on your counter for too long. So yeah, always try and keep it nice and cold.
And how much tuna per person?
I mean, about, I'm doing sort of an appetizer. 3 ounces is about right per person for an appetizer. If you want to do it as an entree, you can double that. So you do about 6 ounces for an entree. So garlic, do I need to rant about garlic? I don't know if you guys have watched me. I'm very fanatical about garlic. I hate, and I don't use that word very often, but I really don't like garlic presses. They denature everything that's beautiful about garlic. So if you're going to work with garlic, treat it like you would any other vegetable. So if you take a head of garlic, peel it very easily, very quickly, you just want to trim off the root and cut it in half. So I always cut it in half for a couple of reasons. One, it makes it easier to dice. 2, it also exposes that. This time of year, I mean, we don't have the fresh garlic yet, so we're using garlic that's, you know, been in cold, been out of the ground for a little while. So we always want to make sure that we remove this. This is the garlic trying to grow. It's a seed. It's trying to do its thing. So we always want to remove that little green, yellow sort of core. The reason is a couple reasons. One, it tastes horrible. That yellow-green core is very, I mean, it's chlorophyll. So it has a very bitter, acrid sort of flavor to it. And that's not, also, it's very hard for a lot of people to digest. So we want to just make sure we remove that. And then we cut it with a knife. Okay, again, please don't use a garlic press. Even just taking it and smashing it on a cutting board, that's not very cool. Just use a knife. It's like any other vegetable. So we're going to very, very finely dice our garlic. You want to dice it as fine as you absolutely can. This is for the Gremolata. So the tuna is marinated. Next thing we're going to do is make the Gremolata. Now, the Gremolata, ideally, you want to let it hang out. It doesn't cook, doesn't marinate. It just sort of, the flavors just sort of amalgamate and it becomes a little more homogeneous. Let that happen for, again, about an hour. We're going to rush it today because we only have an hour, but if you're doing it at home, give yourself some time. So you can see nice, fine dice of garlic. So I've got a bunch because we do need a whole bunch for this recipe. And the next thing we need is a little bit of parsley. So parsley has been washed and dried. Well, it's still a little bit wet in the middle, but for the most part, dried. And we're just going to chop it all up nice and fine. Now, you can see I'm leaving a little bit of the stems in here. That's okay. If you have a little bit of stems, it's not the end of the world. If you're using leaves, if you're using flat leaf parsley, then yeah, you can go through and easily pick out all the stems. But if there's a couple little pieces in there, it's not the end of the world. Not horrible. So what we're going to do is very, very, very fine. What we want to do is get the size of the parsley about the same size as the garlic that we already cut. So Gremolata, for you who don't know it, you should get to know it. Gremolata is honestly one of my favorite things to use in the kitchen. When during my years in the restaurant and in professional restaurants, I always had Gremolata on every recipe. Almost, sorry, not every recipe, every menu. Somewhere on all my menus, there was Gremolata. It's a very, very versatile flavoring ingredient. It goes with fish, it goes with pork, it goes with vegetables. It's just a wonderful, wonderful little addition. It's a great way to brighten up all kinds of dishes. It was so bad. I had a sous chef, Chuck Allen. He was my sous chef for about 10 years. And he used to joke all the time. Gremolata, every menu you write, you have Gremolata on it. It's driving me crazy. When I'm going to open a restaurant, my own restaurant, you know what I'm going to call it? No Gremolata. No Gremolata. It's going to be the name of my restaurant because he got sick of making Gremolata every single day for 10 years. But that's how much I love it. It's a wonderful thing. You'll see. When you make it yourself, you'll see how delicious it is. So you can see how nice and fine that is. You want it super, super, super fine. Any questions out there before I move on?
Yes, since you're cutting the parsley, is there anything else you can use to substitute the parsley?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen gremolatas made with, mint, with oregano put into it, other herbs. But I mean, a true gremolata is 3 ingredients. It's parsley, it's garlic, and it's lemon. If you do add other herbs, I don't know. Is it still gremolata? Maybe. I don't know. I don't add anything else. I just like it straight up this way.
And could you just please repeat how much garlic you used and how much lemon zest?
Okay, so this is the trick. Start off with about equal portions of all 3 of the ingredients. So I'm doing, I don't know, there's probably a tablespoon of garlic, and you want to start off with a tablespoon of parsley and about a tablespoon of lemon zest. A good sized lemon, like a nice big lemon, will give you just under a tablespoon of lemon zest. When you're zesting though, you want to make sure if you're using a microplane, one of these, quite often people, I don't know, people have the tendency to just grate a little bit too much. So grating your lemon, you just want to make sure that it's still kind of yellow. You don't want to grate it so long that you get right down to the white pith. The white part of the lemon, if that gets into your food, a little bit more bitter. So just take off the outside skin. If you don't have a microplane, and it happens, there's another way that you can zest. And when I made Gremolata in my restaurants, I always did it this way. I didn't. So what you can do is just take a vegetable peeler, just like, you know, regular run-of-the-mill vegetable peeler, and you just peel your lemon zest. So you get a nice big sliver of lemon zest. And then from here, with a knife, nice and thin. So I always prefer to do it this way. I always found the flavor just turned out a little bit nicer. And I think the reason is, kitchens, we use the microplane so much that quite often it gets dull. And when it gets dull, it doesn't shave the skin, the zest off of the lemon as well. So it just tended to be, I don't know how to, like a little more accurate, a little more bitter, and not as bright, which is the whole idea. So that's our lemon. So now we have our 3 ingredients. Clean off everything else. So we have our garlic, very finely diced, parsley, fine, and our lemon zest, nice and fine. This is where the magic happens. All 3 of these ingredients are fairly strongly flavored. But when they come together, they make this magical flavor. So I always start with my garlic. I just put a little bit of garlic into a bowl. Then our lemon goes in. And again, we start with about equal portions. So we garlic, touch more in there, and then parsley. And we mix it up. This is where it starts to look beautiful. I don't know. Every time I look at this, I'm excited. I think part of the reason why I love Gremolata so much is because it was the first job I ever did in a restaurant. My first day in a professional restaurant, it was at Scaramouche in Toronto. I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm the apprentice who's here to work for you guys. What do you want me to do?" And some guy just said, "Make Gremolata." So luckily I knew what it was. And I just made Gremolata. So it always sort of, again, kind of an element to cooking. So once you start mixing it in, you give it a little toss around. This is where you need to test it. You need to try it. And the way to do that is to smell it. So you take your bowl, get your nose right in there. Now, when I smell it, I smell lemon. Lemon is the predominant scent, so that means more of the other 2 ingredients in there. And you give it a stir. If you smell garlic, if it smells more like garlic, then you add the other 2. And it's about balancing all 3. It's about balancing all 3 of the flavors. Once all 3 of the flavors are balanced, it doesn't smell like lemon. Doesn't taste like lemon. It doesn't smell like garlic. Doesn't taste like garlic. Doesn't smell like parsley. Doesn't taste like parsley. It tastes and smells like Gremolata. So just keep on adding and mixing until you get a really nice balanced scent. You can't distinguish any of the 3 ingredients. That's when you know that your Gremolata is made well. Keep all this extra stuff and either make a whole bunch more or use it for garnish on your dishes. Any questions?
So since tonight you were supposed to be on the barbecue, but now we're inside, is there any particular way you prefer to cook or to sear your tuna, on the barbecue or on the grill?
If you're going to do it on the grill, It works very well both ways. On the grill, it's a little quicker. You have to be a lot faster because it's hot air that's blowing at your tuna. So you don't want to dry out your fish. So it's literally on the grill for 15 seconds on each side. If you leave it a little bit too long, it'll dry out the fish and it won't be near. Inside on the grill pan, it's a little more forgiving. You can let it sit there for 30 seconds or so each side, and it'll still be nice and moist and tender and delicious. So the difference is timing more than anything. Okay, so I'm gonna turn on my grill pan. So my grill pan is on the stove. I'm just gonna turn it on nice and low so it gets nice. We'll talk about that in a second. But before we go over and start cooking the tuna, we're gonna work on the salad. So the salad, again, very, very simple salad. I don't complicate things too much. Again, when I do these classes, I want to inspire people to cook this stuff at home. I don't want to show off and do all this fancy stuff. I want you guys to say, wow, that was easy. I can do that. So first thing we do is we take a little bit of chickpeas. So some chickpeas, these are chickpeas out of the can. If you want, you can, get dried chickpeas, soak them overnight, cook them off, even put some flavoring into it so that a little bit more heft. But for this purpose, we're just going to use some canned ones. Cans open, rinsed very, very, very well. These are our little chickpeas. So rinse them very well. That's one thing when you're using canned beans. You always have to make sure you rinse them. That kind of, I don't want to call it a slime, but there's that slime in the bottom of the cans of dried peas or beans. That is where that's where all the stuff that makes you feel kind of not so happy afterwards lives. So if you don't like feeling kind of bloated, make sure you rinse them very, very well. So these were just out of the can, rinsed and drained. We're going to add a few more capers, and we're just going to leave them whole, but we're going to be a little judicious with this. We don't want to just dump it. We have some little grape tomatoes. So all different colors, all different sizes and shapes. We're just going to cut these up into small little pieces, okay? I have this thing about salads. I don't like wrestling with salads. I don't like having to use a knife and fork when I'm eating a salad. I mean, there are some times where you have to do it, but I want this to be a elegant little salad that is very easy to eat. So super quick little dice of tomatoes, and use whichever ones look good. Stroll up and down the aisle if you have Romas or if you have some big, beefsteak tomatoes, just cut them into small pieces. We're very, very blessed here in Ontario and Canada. We have so many great hothouse tomato suppliers that we get wonderful tomatoes all year long. So as long as they're not green, buy them, chop them up, put them in the salad. We have a little bit of black olives. I use black olives in this dish. I've tried it with green olives, and I find that the brine of the green olives is just a little bit too strong. It's a little bit too acrid for the tuna. The recipe, it calls for fava beans or green beans. So fava beans work very well. We kind of missed the season. If you find fava beans, it works incredibly well with this dish. Green beans really well. You just blanch them and cut them, or you can use some nice little peas. So strolling through the aisles at Longo's, I saw some beautiful fresh peas. So I grabbed some, and we're going to mix this in. So that's, we'll use them all. Why not? That is the basis of the salad. So to dress the salad, we don't have to do a lot because there's a lot of flavor going on in there. So again, I'm going to go back to the Tuscan olive oil, a little drizzle of the Tuscan olive oil, and a little bit of white wine vinegar. This is again the signature series from Longo's. So a little white wine vinegar, and sprinkle it on top, not too much, and a little bit of fresh ground pepper. Now, you'll notice I'm not using salt yet. I'm not putting salt in the salad, in the vegetables, and I didn't use any salt in the marinade. And this is an important element of marinating. As soon as you start putting salt into anything, into vegetables, onto fish, whatever it happens to be, it starts to basically chemically cook the product that it's on. So if I start adding salt now, it'll start extracting water out of the tomatoes, out of the peas, and it'll start drying them out. We don't want that. So I'm going to salt just before we go to plate. So our salad is done. Our gremolata is done. All we have to do is cook our tuna. Before we head over to the stove, any questions?
Thank you, Chef. Can you just repeat what type of beans you were using?
These are just little peas. I mean, I prefer to use fava beans, but the season's kind of over for fava beans. So green beans are another substitute, but I've just found these beautiful looking little fresh peas. So these peas, I just blanch them very quickly. As the recipe using green beans, just blanch them. So pot of boiling water. These peas were in the water for maybe 20 seconds. And then you take them out, strain them, and let them cool down. So that's the salad.
And when you make the gremolata before, we have a question to the parsley. Does it have to be dried when you cut it?
Yes. So when you're chopping herbs, you always make sure that they're washed and dry. If they're not dry, then when you go to chop them, they get sort of bruised. And the water sort of seeps into the cuts, and they just don't taste the same. Where we want everything to be bright. If your herbs are wet and you chop them, if your parsley is wet and you chop them, you end up making like a parsley pesto almost. It gets bruised and beat up and not. So yes, always make sure they're dry. So I washed the parsley at, I don't know, it's probably 12:30 this afternoon. And then I just let it hang out on the counter on a paper towel so that all the water drips off. Whenever you're drying, when you wash herbs or you wash anything, you always want to dry it the same way it grows. So if you take parsley or you take any vegetable, I don't know, bok choy, for example, wash it and then you turn it sideways and you lay it down, the leaves aren't designed to shed water that way. They're designed to shed water when they're upright. That's what a plant does. It doesn't want the water on the leaves. So if you sit it upright, you'll get a lot more water extracted. Your leaves will dry out more evenly and more quickly. So I just kind of propped it up like this in a bowl with that all the water just dropped onto the paper towel, and you just let it sit there for, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half, and it'll become nice and dry. I usually do it as soon as I buy the product, and then from there I throw it in my fridge, and I don't have to wash it every time I need it.
And we just have a couple of questions for the tuna. Is it okay to use frozen tuna, or would you prefer fresh? And also, there's different varieties of tuna. Is there a specific one that you should be using for this recipe?
No, I mean all the tunas, bluefin, yellowfin. It doesn't matter as long as it is, you know, a good quality tuna. You can tell when you look at a piece of tuna. It gets this. If it's it'll be really soft. First of all, you'll see, you know, if you're at the counter and they pick it up and it flops all over the place, that's the connective tissue in the tuna sort of breaking down. That happens when it's old. You'll also see a sheen on it. It looks like gasoline, like gasoline in water. You know, you get that rainbowy kind of sheen. That happens to tuna when it gets old. So if you see that sort of sheen on the tuna, you keep rummaging around or ask for another piece that doesn't have that. As, like I said, bluefin or yellowfin, doesn't matter as long as it's fresh and as long as it's good. Frozen versus fresh, that is a debate. There are certain countries that won't allow to serve fish that hasn't been frozen. A lot of, and Canada's trying to do it too. They're trying to pass a law where you can't serve fish unless it has been frozen at some time. The reason is it kills pathogens, it kills some bacteria that can be harmful. So a lot of people prefer frozen tuna to fresh tuna. Frozen tuna reacts very well. It still cooks very well. It's still delicious. It doesn't lose a lot of water. It's one of the fish that does very well with freezing. The big thing is making sure that you thaw it properly. And again, to thaw it, you don't leave it on your counter for 4 hours. You want to thaw it in your fridge. A loin that I had, if that was frozen, that would take about a day and a half in the fridge to completely thaw. If you thaw it quickly, it's not good. That is bacteria heaven. So you don't want to do that. Nice and slow in a cool fridge. Give it twice as long as you think it's going to take to thaw. Once it's thawed, as long as it stays in your fridge, it's stable. Even if you think it's going to take 2 days and it thaws in 1 day, it's okay to hang out in your fridge to spoil. It's not going to go bad. You're not going to make anyone sick. So you're better off to thaw it early in your fridge and then let it hang out in the fridge until you're ready to cook it. So fresh and frozen, doesn't matter. I've seen beautiful frozen product and I've seen bad fresh product. It doesn't matter as long as the quality is there. So that's the important part. Okay, so we're going to head over to the stove now, and we're going to start. I'm going to grab my tuna out of the fridge, and my cast iron pan. So this is just a grill pan. I'm not sure if you can see from the angle, but it's just a cast iron pan that has some grooves in the actual pan. I just put it on very low. I had it on like number 2, just it starts to get hot. Cast iron pans, grill pans, they're great for searing, and they're really good for doing fish, for things that are delicate. When I do grilled scallops, I will not grill scallops on the grill, I will always do it on a pan, in a pan like this. The reason is this is a moist heat method of cooking. So that means it's not hot, dry air blasting at it. The oil that is on all around the fish, that's a method of heat transfer. It takes the heat from the grill pan and transfers it to the actual fish. So what we do now is we add our salt. So salt before, I'm just going to go and put a little bit of salt on the tuna now. So once we're ready, the tuna is quite delicate, so you have to be careful. That's why I use my hands when I'm handling the tuna. If you feel a little bit weird about it, don't just grab it with a pair of, try and pick it up with these guys, you're just going to tear the tuna. So you want to pick it up something that has a wider tip, or ideally, if you can, a pair of tongs like this that have like a nice big rubber sort of tip to it. It'll support it a little bit better. So our pan is nice and hot. We pick up our tuna, we place it in the pan. Now it's going to make some steam or some smoke. It's going to smoke. Make sure your exhaust hood is on. I can't turn my exhaust hood on now, or else you won't hear me. Make sure your exhaust hood is on. Your windows are open, and the batteries are out of your smoke alarm, which I forgot to do. So get ready for it. Like I said, because we're cooking in a grill pan, we have a little bit more time. We can be a little bit more patient. If I was outside on the barbecue, I would be moving them right about now. I would already be moving them. But because we have some time, and we let it cook. So if you cook a lot of fish, invest in it's called a fish spatula. So this is fish. This works really well to get underneath. It's nice and flexible, so you can get underneath and support the whole fish when we go to move it. So our fish is cooking. It already smells awesome. Cooking. Any questions?
Yes, we have a few. Did you put anything in the pan before you put the fish in? Like, did you use oil?
No, not at all. So with a cast iron pan, just like, oh wow, if it's seasoned well, it won't stick and it won't require any extra oil. The oil from the marinade is enough to prevent it from sticking. So you'll notice that I gave it a little toss, like I flipped it over just before I put it in. That was to make sure that all of the sides of the tuna were coated in oil. So this one's being a little stubborn.
So let's hear a little bit off.
How hot is your, how high is the heat?
So I just turned the heat up a bit, just because once you start searing, I'm taking, about a pound of tuna that I'm putting into the pan. So the temperature of the tuna, the cold tuna, will drop the temperature of the pan quite a bit. So I had it on 2 just to get it preheated, and now I just turned it up to, what am I at? I'm at an even 4, we'll call it. You want it hot.
And if you use it on the barbecue, do you have to put anything on the barbecue?
I have to. No, as long as I'm not a fan of oiling my grills. Yeah, this guy's sticking. Why you got to be like that? So this is called overloading your pan. Product into your pan. I should have done one line at a time, but even professionals make mistakes. So if you're doing it on the barbecue, I don't oil my grill. I don't spray the grill with oil. I just make sure that the tuna is nicely coated and right onto the grill.
And can you just quickly repeat what you put on the tuna before when you marinated it?
So the marinade is olive oil, black pepper, capers, and shallots. And just before I start cooking, I put a little bit of salt on. Okay, so this guy's sticking a bit. So now, because I sort of cut angular profiles, I want to make sure that I sear all 3 sides. So you have to kind of stand them up on their edge. Yeah. So sometimes this will happen. You'll get little pieces. It'll stick a bit. Like I said, I overloaded the pan. I put too much product in. And now I'm just going to take it off the heat because I'm just letting it finish. The tuna itself is actually cooked now. So all I'm going to do now is let it rest, let it finish cooking off of the heat because there's enough heat stored in the pan to finish the cooking. So double sear like that. Let's get a little plate ready. And we're good to go.
Just one more question. In the recipe, it says you have to cook the tuna 2 minutes per side. Is that more or less what you did here, or should it be more? Should it be less? And how about the barbecue?
So as I said, on a barbecue, it's a lot quicker. So I think I said 15 seconds, right? Aside. That's on a hot barbecue. In the grill pan, like I said, it's not as hot. It's not super hot air blasting at it. So you have a little bit more time. So this is the exact same theory. I put it down, and then I flipped it over, and then I rotated it, and I flipped it back over. So that you get these nice, they're called. So once it's cooked, we take it off, and just like any protein, we want to let it rest. So the meat, tuna, the fish, if I take it out of the pan, it's still cooking. So the fish right now is still cooking, even though it's hanging out on a cutting board. It's still cooking. So we want to let it finish cooking. This is a salad. The tuna, it can be served at room temperature, but you definitely don't want it hot. It's better to have it cold. We have one last step to do before we start plating. Any questions before we start plating?
Yes, we had a question in regards to the tuna. Is the center of the tuna warm when you just cook it this briefly on the stove? And can you just repeat which tuna you purchased tonight?
Barely warm. Like the core of the tuna should be room temperature, nothing more. If you cook it any further than that, you might as well just open a can of good tuna and eat that. The beauty of using fresh tuna is that you're cooking it rare. If you don't like your fish rare or medium rare, then don't buy tuna. There are other fishes that tend to be better overcooked, more cooked. sorry, but tuna, yes, should be barely, barely, barely warm in the center. So, last thing we have to do is a cucumber. So, cucumber, I'm going to plate this dish how I saw it when I was in Calabria, when I was in Tropea. It's kind of old school, but I don't know. Again, it's nostalgia. I'm a very nostalgic kind of person, if you haven't figured out by now. So I'm going to plate it the same way that it was done there. I don't know. It just makes me smile, makes me happy when I do it this way. So, big English cucumber and a mandolin. So this is, you know, a chef's best friend. We use mandolins quite a bit for a lot of different applications. This is a great application for using a mandolin. If you don't, this is Japanese mandolin. Japanese mandolins are plastic. The French mandolins are usually stainless steel and have a big base on it. These are very inexpensive. And as far as kitchen equipment goes, there's a great return on your investment with the mandolin because you use it for everything. So if you don't have a mandolin, you can use a vegetable peeler. Just take a vegetable peeler and peel big strips off. But what I'm going to do is just push this through the mandolin so I get these really nice, big, long strips. So I only need a couple, but I want to go right down into the core. A couple nice big guys from the middle. So that is the last element that we have for our ingredients for our salad. Now that we have our tuna, we have our gremolata, we have our salad. I have no place to put this. I'm going to put this over here. We're going to take our last ingredient, which is a little bit of the organic arugula baby spinach salad. Wonderful product. I don't know. I have this thing about buying baby arugula in grocery stores quite often. I'll go to a grocery store and they just come with these giant. You get baby spinach, and the leaves are the size of your head. You get the arugula that is more stalk than actual leaf. This baby arugula and baby spinach is actually, it's baby. It's nice and small. So this is our lettuce, leaf lettuce that's already ready to go. And we're going to cut our tuna. We have our little piece of tuna on our cutting board, and we just want to slice it nice and thin. So I got to make some room, sorry. So very thin, long knife, sharp knife, and you just want to slice it, trying not to break up any of that nice outside crust. So you'll see in a second, once I'm done, how nice and pink, red on the inside. This is how it should be. When you, oh, I just broke the edge. So when you see your tuna, just a nice cooked piece around the outside, but the inside, yeah, it's barely within room temperature. But you see how it's nice and moist. You can see the glistening on the tuna. That's what you want. That means you did everything right. So to plate our salad, kind of old school, but it's fun. It makes me laugh. Even just thinking about it, it makes me laugh. So we take our plate, we take our giant strips of cucumber, and we make a little, come on, cut it a little thick. We just make a little cylinder out of it. Press it together. Yeah, cut it a tiny bit thick so it wants to open up. So we have a nice little ring of cucumber. Then we take our marinade, our vegetables that have been marinating in the oil and the vinegar, and we're just going to season it a little bit. Yeah, you're going to be like. So that's what happens when you cut your zucchinis a little bit too thick. Or sorry, your cucumbers a little too thick. They keep springing open. So I'm going to cut another one. We got to make this look. We got to make this look good. So just make it a little bit thinner. and it'll hold together a little bit better. It won't want to spring open as much as that other one. So we make a nice little, basically, you're making a cucumber pot. I've added a little bit of salt here, and we put a little bit of the vegetables right in the bottom. So this, we kind of layer this salad together. So you can toss it all together if you want, if you're in a rush. I've done this for banquets before where, you know, I haven't had time to individually plate each one. So you can toss vegetables with your lettuce and put it all together. So you can see if I can show you, just a nice thin layer of the vegetables on the bottom. Then we take our baby lettuces, our arugula and mixture, and we put a little bit in there, and we sort of fill up the bowl, our little cucumber bowl, with the lettuces. And then we take a little bit more of the mixture, and not too much because we don't want to lettuce. So we just sprinkle a little bit on there, make sure you can see it, make sure you got a little bit of all the ingredients, just like this. Now in the bottom of the bowl, you'll see the oil and the vinegar and some of the tomatoes has come out. That is going to be our dressing for the actual lettuce. So I always dress my lettuces, almost always dress my lettuces after they go on the plate so that it doesn't wilt and start to cook. Now we take our tuna and we gently place it on top of the salad. We don't want to cover up all of the chickpeas and the peas and the olives that we have in here, but we want to make sure that we can see the tuna. The tuna is the star of this, so it's okay to cover up a couple pieces of tomato in order to show off the tuna. So I'm just going to put a couple pieces on here just so that, you know, again, you can kind of see it. And then to finish it off, we just take our gremolata. So the gremolata is where all the real flavor comes from, and we just want a little sprinkle right on top. Now, a lot of flavor in the gremolata. It's raw garlic, remember. It's not cooked garlic at all, so there's a ton of flavor in here. So we just place a little bit on top, and as you eat the salad, it gets mixed down into the lettuce, into vegetables, and it sort of seasons everything together. Now, if you want, and I often do this, if you have a nice big plate like this and it looks a little boring, you can sprinkle a few of the ingredients around the plate. Again, just showing off what's inside the salad. You don't want to go too crazy or else, you know, it just looks kind of messy. But a few little pieces, nicely spaced around the dish is good. Going to take another little drizzle of olive oil just to sort of coat all the vegetables. And again, just to show off that we have the gremolata, a nice light sprinkle. You don't ever want to put garnish on your rim, but a little sprinkle mixed in with all your vegetables makes for a tasty dish. So I'm back in Calabria right now. I'm sitting on a beachside restaurant in Tropea, just smelling this dish, just looking at this dish brings me back to there. If you've never been there, it's a beautiful place to be. But if you can't make it, if you want to wait a couple months before we get there, make this dish. Honestly, it'll remind you, hopefully, of Tropea like it does.
I have a few more questions for you, Chef.
Sure.
We'll start with the tuna. If somebody's using sliced tuna, how should they prepare it in a pan to make it look pink on the inside, and just like you did with yours?
So if you're using
portion, you're talking about the portion pieces that are like large and sort of already cut. You just have to be really fast. So if you're going to use that in a pan, you have to make sure your pan is smoking hot, like to the point where you're afraid to cook in it. Make sure you have fire extinguisher, but make sure your pan is really, really hot. And it shouldn't be, if it's like, you know, this thick, about an inch thick, honestly, it's 5 seconds on one side, 5 seconds on the other. Maybe 10 seconds is pushing it. If you go any longer than that, then yeah, it'll be cooked all the way through. So if it's thin, hotter pan, much less time in the pan.
And there's another question for the tuna. Is it safe to eat it rare since it's quite pink on
Absolutely.
the inside?
Absolutely. So tuna, that a fish that is often, I mean, all sushi is raw. It's not even seared like this. Here in Canada, our controls are the way that we control the food that we ingest is crazy. If you ever speak to an Italian about what we do with food and what can come into the country and what can't come into the country, for European countries, they think it's insane. Because it's so we're safe, it makes me feel very good. It makes me feel very safe serving rare tuna. I've never had a problem, and honestly, I've been cooking I've been cooking for a very long time, and I've kilos and kilos and kilos and kilos of tuna. So I've never made anyone sick. I've never heard of anyone getting sick. Just treat it properly. The thawing is more important if it's frozen. That is if you don't thaw it properly. Steering it rare, not a problem.
And can you substitute a cucumber for somebody that doesn't like cucumbers or can't eat them?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you don't have to plate it this way. The cucumber is a dish, yes, but more than anything, it just acts as a nice little 1990s plating style. So if you don't want the cucumber, don't put the cucumber in. I don't know what else would work to do. I mean, I guess you could do it with a piece of zucchini, but zucchini doesn't really work as far as flavor profile. So if you're going to do it without the cucumber, don't plate it this way. Just lay the slats of tuna, the slivers of tuna out on the plate and put your salad up.
Could you just show us the salad again that you used? And also, could you suggest a wine with this dish?
Ooh, wine. So that is our salad. The Longo's organic baby spinach and arugula. And like I said, it's really baby. It's awesome. It's so nice to see. Wine, whatever you like. I mean, I've had this dish, a Barbera d'Asti, frizzante. I've had it with Prosecco, a nice, anything that's white. I mean, ideally, this is summertime. I was hoping it was going to be 40 degrees outside and perfect temperature and time for it. So think about what you would like to drink. You need something with a little bit of minerality, just because of the raw vegetables. But basically, when it comes to food and wine pairing, if you like food and you like wine, just drink what you like. Everybody will be happy.
I just have two more questions for you.
Sure.
If somebody doesn't have a grill pan, can they use an iron pan?
Yes. So you can sear this as well. So if you use just a regular cast iron pan or even a frying pan, like a regular stainless steel Lagostina frying pan, you can do that. You absolutely can sear it. You just don't get those nice little grill marks in it. And it's a lot faster because the fish, the entire surface of the fish is in contact with the pan. So you get a lot quicker heat transfer. So if you're doing it in a flat pan, again, you're down to 5 to 7 seconds per side. Let it cool down, and you're fine.
And one last question. What dessert would you pair with this dish? Like, what could be the ends to this perfect dish?
The dessert we're doing next week.
So next week is this amazing. I mean, I think it's amazing, and I've served it to thousands of people, and they all think it's amazing too. So it's a grilled angel food cake, and it sounds kind of weird, but if you tune in next week, you can. And I guarantee you, if you watch me do it, see how simple it is, and you do it once yourself, it'll be one of your go-to desserts for the summer. Guaranteed. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed today's class. I hope that you see how easy good food can be. Technically, nothing difficult here. All the products are available at the Longo's store. If you need a little more inspiration and I'm not around, Longo's, pick up one of the magazines. Awesome, gorgeous magazine, great for inspiration in the summertime. And if not, yeah, tune in next week and we'll talk dessert.
Well, thank you so much, chefs. It was amazing. It was a very incredible recipe tonight. Thank you, Longos and the Loft, for sponsoring this class. And thank you, Chef Astrid, Isabella, and everybody at the chamber for putting this all together. See you next week, and arrivederci.